Hello and welcome to this video about the history of architecture in New York. New York is a city that has always been at the forefront of architectural design, producing buildings and structures that have set the standard for the rest of the world. The history of architecture in New York is a story of growth, innovation, and influence. From the colonial era to the present day, the city has been home to some of the most iconic and memorable buildings in the world. In this video, we will take a look at the history of architecture in New York, from the colonial era to the present day. Dutch colonial era, 1600s–1776. The Dutch settlers founded New Amsterdam in 1624, which later became New York City. Dutch colonial architecture is characterized by brick and stone buildings with steep roofs and stepped gables. The use of brick was a practical choice, as it was readily available and provided insulation in the cold, damp climate. 4. Dutch gables were used to maximize interior space and light, and to provide an attic storage area. 5. Examples of Dutch colonial architecture include the Stadhuis, City Hall, and the Wyckoff House Museum, such as the Brooklyn Heights Historic District and the Soho neighborhood. Georgian era, 1700s–1770s. The Georgian era in New York was influenced by classical European architecture and design. Georgian architecture features symmetrical facades, with columns, pilasters, and pediments. The use of classical elements was a symbol of wealth, education, and political stability. 4. Georgian buildings were typically constructed of brick or stone, with simple ornamentation such as dentil molding, cornices, and balustrades. 5. Examples of Georgian architecture are City Hall, the Federal Hall National Memorial, and the Alexander Hamilton U.S. Custom House. Federal era, 1780s–1820s. 1. The Federal era saw the rise of neoclassical architecture, with a focus on symmetry, proportion, and classical motifs. 2. Federal buildings were typically constructed of brick or stone. Neoclassical elements, such as Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns, were used to create a sense of order and harmony. 4. Federal architecture include the United States Custom House, the New York Stock Exchange, and Federal Hall National Memorial. 5. The Federal era was a time of prosperity and growth in New York. Gothic Revival era, 1820s–1850s. 1. The Gothic Revival era saw a resurgence of interest in medieval architecture, with pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and intricate details. Gothic Revival buildings were typically constructed of stone, with ornamentation such as gargoyles, pinnacles, and tracery. 3. The style was popularized by the writings of Horace Walpole. Examples of Gothic Revival architecture in New York include the Trinity Church and St. Patrick's Cathedral. 5. Gothic Revival architecture was often used for religious and educational buildings. Beaux-Arts era, 1890s–1910s. The Beaux-Arts era was characterized by ornate, grandiose buildings, inspired by classical European design. Beaux-Arts buildings feature elaborate facades, with columns, pediments, and sculptural details. The style was popularized by the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, which trained many of the leading architects of the period. 4. Beaux-Arts architecture include Grand Central Terminal, the New York Public Library, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 5. The Beaux-Arts style was used for train stations, museums, banks, and government buildings. 6. The Beaux-Arts era was a time of great wealth and prosperity in New York, and the style of architecture reflected the optimism and confidence of the period. Art Deco era, 1920s–1930s. The Art Deco era was characterized by sleek, modern buildings, with bold geometric shapes and intricate details. Art Deco buildings feature streamlined facades, with zigzag patterns, sunbursts, and stepped forms. The style was inspired by a variety of sources, including machine design, ancient cultures, and the Bauhaus school of design. 4. Art Deco architecture include the Empire State Building, the Rockefeller Center, and the Daily News Building. 5. The Art Deco era was a time of great optimism and technological advancements. Modernist era, 1930s–1960s. The Modernist era was characterized by clean, minimalist buildings, with simple, unadorned facades. Modernist buildings feature flat roofs, large windows, and an absence of ornamentation. 3. The style was inspired by the International style, free from historical references and regional styles. 4. Modernist architecture include the United Nations headquarters, the Seagram Building, and the TWA Flight Center. 6. The modernist era was a time of great social and cultural change, and reflected the desire for a new, modern way of life. The history of architecture in New York City is rich and diverse, reflecting the changing styles, tastes, and influences of each era. Each period has contributed to the unique and diverse architectural landscape of the city. These styles are embodied in iconic landmarks and buildings that continue to define the city today. And they offer a glimpse into the history and cultural values of the past. New York City's architecture continues to evolve, as new styles and designs emerge. Please hit the subscribe button for more videos.